Hello and welcome. Oh, I should have put this on first, shouldn't I? It's a very chilly, cold morning here in Katohili, Karnataka, South India. When I say cold and chilly, I check the temperature, well, what it says on the phone anyway, for this area. And apparently it's 22 degrees, which I seem to remember as being quite a hot day back in Blighty, in good old England. A day of 22 would be a balmy summer, I think. But strangely enough, you become acclimatized, and here, 22 degrees centigrade, I'm talking about, obviously, is really quite cold. So I have had my little bit of cloth on my head. I thought I'd better take it off for this video though. And now I'm quite chilly, but it's refreshing. I've got the breeze coming in through the windows. Excuse me if the lighting isn't terrific, but that light I have on is the best one insect-wise. There is another light, but it seems to attract more insects for this time of day. It's the 20th of October 2023. I arrived here in India on the 20th of October 2020. And if you remember, that was right bang in the middle of this thing we called the pandemic. So without going into that whole story as to how I got here, because that is a story in itself, I arrived here 3 years ago today. And apart from 2 weeks in Nepal in early 2022, and 1 month or 28 days in England in around the middle of 2022, and then more recently, at the beginning of this year, 2023, I spent 7 months in Thailand, returning here for this rains retreat in August this year, 2023, where I have spent the last 3 months here in this same location. Mainly in that 3 years though, I've lived here in India permanently, within mainly this state, Karnataka, which is central southern India. And the state in itself is about the size of the whole of the UK. So it's quite large. All of the states in India are large. They're as big as countries in Europe. So you can see the enormity of this country, how big it is. I have been up to northeast India, to Bihar, this state where the holy sites are during this time. In fact, my higher ordination was in Bodh Gaya, the main Buddhist holy site, the place where the Buddha was enlightened and is in fact like the Mecca or the Jerusalem, but the holy site of Buddhism as a whole. Globally, people come from all over the world, Buddhists, to visit that place as being the seat of enlightenment, if you like, the origins of Buddhism. And the other holy places, Lumbini in Nepal, where the Buddha was born, which would have been perhaps still in India at the time, and Kushinagar, where the Buddha died, and also where he first taught in Sarnath, which is near Varanasi. But that's all up in the northeast of India, a long way from here, a plane ride in fact of some 1.5 to 2 hours, or a very, very long train journey. I've been here though for 3 years now, and that time has flown by extremely quickly. The world, apparently, because I don't keep in touch with the news or media or have social media, I have only this connection with the world, and it's a bit one way. I talk to this camera, this phone, and make these videos. And I suppose you could call that social media in some sense of the word, but it's not a really way of communication, apart from the wonderful comments I receive from you, questions and emails. That is about the sole extent of my communication with the external world. And we talk only of Dharma, of Buddhist practice. My practice, your practice, our practice. As Kalyanamita, friends on the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha showed us to lead us in the right direction towards enlightenment. Now, coming towards the end of this Vasa, this 3-month retreat period, I can now officially announce and say that I will be going to Sri Lanka after this 3 years in India on the 30th of this month, October. And I know I've let you into that secret previously, but I received official approval, permission to take leave of the Sangha for that purpose, to go on Tudong, as we would say in Thailand, but the Pali word is charaka, wandering. So I will be going wandering with no particular place to go. Once I reach my destination of Sri Lanka, I will go wandering and relying on the support of lay Buddhists to provide my food each day, if I'm lucky, and find some shelter, maybe sleeping outside. I will take you with me, and I think it promises to be quite an interesting adventure, hopefully along the same lines as the adventure so far. I don't think of it as an adventure, because prior to coming here 3 years ago, I had other adventures, including really off and on 5 years of travelling back and forth from England to Thailand, where I trained in this tradition of forest monasticism within different monasteries, but mainly one monastery of the Thai Forest tradition, and that also of my monastery in England. I also spent 3 years living in a van, just not a camper van, just an empty old builder's van on the beach prior to coming here into the COVID period. So I even had 6 months experience of lockdown, living outside, which seems like a paradox, but having no house, having given up through renunciation, even prior to ordination, I renounced worldly life and took up the life of a bhikkhu, a homeless mendicant, a wanderer, a monk, of my own volition, without ordination. I lived as a monk for 3 years before coming here. So with the previous experience I've had, my Sangha here in India are happy to allow me to go a little earlier for this purpose of charaka, wandering in Sri Lanka. Partly, I suppose, because of my age. I'm 56 years of age now, and my previous experience living with monks in monasteries for many years prior to coming here 3 years ago for my ordination. They know I have sufficient background and perhaps discipline to cope with life on the outside, so a little bit away from my own Sangha. There will be the supports of other monks, monasteries and the Sanghas there in Sri Lanka, but of course my responsibility is to this here in India, my own family, my monastic family, my teachers here, with this Sangha within which I ordained, because I am still a Navaka monk. We are Navaka monks, which means new, or Navaka Bhikkhu, which means new bhikkhus, until we have been a bhikkhu for 5 years. So I have dependency on my teacher here, my primary teacher, Acharya, and also my Upacharya, who is my ordaining senior bhikkhu here. One takes dependence on those as your protection. your support in all monastic aspects, all monastic things, problems or successes to do with our practice, everything. They're responsible for us, and we have a responsibility to them. So this is why I have to seek that permission and receive that permission before I can go wandering. And ordinarily this wouldn't be with younger bhikkhus, perhaps maybe with less worldly experience, wouldn't be allowable until you've been with the Sangha for 5 years. So I'm quite privileged to have that opportunity to go a little earlier, and grateful to my teachers for that. Now the world's changed, as I was saying, quite dramatically. Wars have come. I'd like to say wars have come and wars have gone, but wars have come and are still going, and more wars have started and are still going. I'm not going to talk about war. This is perhaps something you're hearing about in the media all of the time. My only recommendation with regards to these things is, whilst having compassion and being caring for what's going on in the world, don't torture yourselves. Turn off the media. Don't be reviewing the newspapers half a dozen times a day. I know it's tempting to keep checking, what's going on, but really once a day is enough. Like when we had this pandemic, myself, every day I was watching the Prime Minister's update, mainly because I was very desperately trying to get to Thailand at the time, or India, somewhere for my ordination, and was held up 6 months because of COVID coming along. I'd planned to go in January and wasn't able to go until this time, October, after having returned from Thailand to the UK in December 2019. Actually, I'd been in Cambodia and then returned to UK via China. I hope it wasn't all my fault, but landed in the UK December 2019, and then COVID began. It sounds dodgy, that, doesn't it? But I was only fleetingly on a connecting flight in China at that time, in Beijing, and then stuck in England until October 2020 when I came here. And then I was stuck here, of course, because this thing, COVID, continued. And it was a very beautiful time here for me. I'd gone on a little charaka excursion here to the west coast. But then there was no transport and everything, so I had to stay there for a long time. And I've spent most of my time in that place on the west coast, still in this same state, but a coastal part, very beautiful beaches, rocks, cliffs, caves, forests, jungles, and all of this, to some extent actually, because I didn't start these videos until a year ago, but a lot of these locations are here on this. Not like a travel vlog, but you can see them in the background and you can hear of my experiences. And this is largely what this channel is about. Just my contribution to this channel is just that. My experiences as a newly ordained Buddhist monk, now not quite so new, but at the time, newly ordained Buddhist monk, during my first few vasas here. That's the monsoons, rains retreats that we mark our time as in the robes as monks. This is, well, like a diary, I suppose, but more so me explaining or talking about my experience of real immersion in the Dharma, my renunciation of worldly life, because although I renounced fully really most of my worldly life whilst I was still in the UK, I still had some responsibilities. I still used money and I still had to cook my own and provide my own food. Although that did to some extent become supplied by people who looked after me there. But really I was quite alone and in solitude, but still with the use of money. But then when you ordain, you have to renounce that also and take on many other rules, training rules and supportive rules to the practice as monks. which I talk about every Uposatha, the 227 rules and the Sila and this and that, so I won't go into that again now. But then coming here and living here in that new form, I have had travel experience. I have been back to the UK in this form and found it really, I forgot. I'd been a monk for long enough to forget I was a monk, and was wandering around London, wandering around my mother's village where she lives on the south coast of England, and places. Really, I was like this. Obviously, we have no other way of dressing as monks, without even any thought to the fact that I might look a little odd and out of place. And really, it's very wonderful that nobody gave me any impression either to that effect. I had no one saying, "Whoa, look at you, weirdo," or anything like this, or even what one might expect of old, of, "Oh, Hare Krishna," which used to be the case. It's so politically correct, I think, now, my own country, England, that nobody dare even stare. I would have expected staring. I mean, people stare here a lot. In India, it's normal. It's part of the culture. I think it's quite considered polite to stare, maybe, but they really stare at you. And it's, until you're used to it, it's quite disconcerting. But then you learn after a few years, just you wobble your head like this and move on. It's not a problem, people staring at you. But they're not staring at you because you're odd. They're staring, well, you are, because I forget here also, I'm a different colour to Indian people. I've not ever, having the language barrier, I mean, I don't know whether people say, "Hey, whitey," or anything like this. I wouldn't know. But I suppose I look different. But I don't have mirrors, you see. So walking through the streets of London, walking in my mother's village, it was actually not in London, but in my mother's village, I walked past a shop window and thought, hey, there's a monk, and there's me pointing, whoa, look, and staring, look, there's a monk. No, it was me, it was my reflection, and oh no, what do I look like? Because this surprised me, because I'd forgotten, I'd become so accustomed to this attire, this way of being, this form. And this is the practice of renunciation. We let go of our former existence and become, although we're letting go of also this wanting, this desire, this sense of becoming, but we do take on this form by way of renunciation. I mean, this form is by no means some kind of ceremonial uniform robe or dress, our sangatis perhaps, this extra robe we put over our shoulders for ceremonial purposes is perhaps as far as it goes, as far as dressing up is concerned. But really this is just rag robes. These are old robes, bits of cloth found, a kusala cloth, not good cloth or unattractive, unbeautiful cloth. It used to be the cloths used to wrap up dead bodies that's discarded, which we are allowed as bhikkhus to pick up, wash, clean, sew together and then dye and make these robes. So we wear these rag robes as signifying our poverty, our humility, and the renunciation of our former dress, which would have been of a higher standard. But it's to remind us in this form of what we are and what we represent, and that is the Sangha. We represent the Sangha in this, if you want to call it something, uniform. What is contained, this body, me, within these robes, is nothing to do with what I represent as part of these robes, other than this being adhering to the bhikkhu's rules of training, 227 rules, keeping sila, moral virtue, practicing meditation, samadhi, and developing wisdom, panya, which of course as lay people you're also doing. But with the also good fortune and ability to lead an ordinary life in society as best you can and still practice Buddhism. So a little bit the best of both worlds. I did try for many years to try and straddle the gap between monk life and lay life, thinking there was somewhere between. And to some extent it is possible. Yes, you can be an 8 precept layperson, but it is a little bit difficult. I think if you stay living in a non-Buddhist country like England, then if you have some money and some income to support yourself, then yes, it can be done. But of course you are then reliant on some money and income. But other than that, you do have to become a monk if you want to really give up that earning a living or having some savings or money to be thinking about. You do need to renounce that. And in non-Buddhist countries, it does then require you to become part of a sangha, to live within a monastery. For them to afford you the protection you need of shelter, continuing to provide these robes, any medicine you may need, and food each day, because you're not necessarily going to get food wandering the streets of England, and also weather isn't that suitable to living outside as it is in these warmer climes, even on this chilly 22-degree morning. It will be up to about 42 this afternoon, or not long into the morning. By 10 o'clock it'll be certainly in the 30s, so it's quite a rapid change and temperature difference to experience. I notice there's some mist and fog, and it's probably feeling cold because of that dampness, the humidity, I suppose. And I keep all these windows and doors open all night, so that's maybe why I was chilly. What am I rambling on about today? I'm really not sure. I wanted to just, officially confirm that I now have permission that from my Sangha to go with their blessing on Charaka. How long that will be for, I don't know. It may be another 3 years, who knows. It's a new country, a new adventure, a new experience for me. But what doesn't change is that which knows, that I often refer to. This citta, if you like, this awareness, conscious awareness of what is going on all around us. Whether I'm in my van freezing -5 degrees on the beaches of England, or in my van sweltering at sort of being in a tin box summer temperatures, which would get to very late 30s in that van, and I was unable to go outside and wander around because it was a lockdown time, and I also didn't want to be really too visible. It was extremes, but what remained constant throughout that time, and has remained constant coming to this country and then going to Thailand and Nepal, back to England again, what remains constant is the practice. Firstly, what I'm doing. My meditation routine remains pretty much the same daily, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. A friend I was talking to yesterday, it's rare I talk to anybody, but I was just letting him know that I was moving from India to Sri Lanka for a while, because he's an upasaka who comes to India sometimes. And I said, what was I going to say? Now I've forgotten what I was going to say. And now my mind's gone blank. The cockerels are crowing. Cock-a-doodle-doo. I hope you can hear that. It's dawn. It's time for me to go on alms round, which I haven't actually been doing so much here. It's not very much a place you can just go on Pindapat, alms round, and expect to get food. People will talk to you and they'll give you the chai shop owners will invite you in for chai, but you end up really socializing. And the point of going on alms round is we don't communicate much. We go to be seen, to receive the food, and to return. It's a purposeful thing. It's not something we do as a spectacle. It shouldn't be seen that way. It should always be seen as the practical means, our livelihood, our practical means for living, for getting food each day, not some spectacle or religious ceremony or something that's brought out on special occasions to say, hey, look, we're monks, we go on alms round. No, it's really our right livelihood, as in the Noble Eightfold Path. Your job might be you're a farmer, or you're a doctor, or you're an engineer. This is your right livelihood. My right livelihood is going out with this bowl each day. I don't know whether you can see that there, begging for food each morning. But I can't do that here because I'm in a very Hindu place, and they have a similar tradition, but it's done in a very different way. And if I don't behave in that way, which is actually inappropriate for Buddhist monks to behave, as in going outside and saying this particular chant, saying, hey, mother of the house, bring out some food, I am a monk, which we're not allowed to do. If I don't do that, they're not going to bring out the food. And I don't want to interfere with their rites, rituals, beliefs and traditions and religions. I'm not here in this form to convert, to be evangelical, to proselytize, to get on a soapbook and say, hey, become a Buddhist. That's not important. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to live the life as an example for people to see that Buddhist monks do live as Buddhist monks, as instructed, taught and trained by the Buddha himself 2,560 odd years ago, still to this day, by this traditional means of these 3 robes only, just this bowl. These are our only requisites, going from place to place, living outside and relying on alms food each morning, each day. That one meal only. If people see that, then they have faith, saddha, they have faith, confidence in the practices of Buddhism. Because if the monks can live and become content and therefore happy living like that, then wow, as a layperson, what an opportunity you have to practice not only all the advantageous aspects of Buddhism, of sila, of meditation, of moral virtue, of samadhi, meditation, and of wisdom, of panya, developing these wholesome mind states and happiness, you can also enjoy the fruits of lay life too. But you seeing the monk, you seeing the samana, the wandering ascetic, living in the way the Buddha taught, is something that is inspiring. And this is why the Buddha insisted that we remain dependent on lay people and continue this practice. After all, if monks hadn't in his time, and they'd just gone and fended for themselves, grew their own food, cooked their own food, then lay people wouldn't have seen them, and the monks would have eventually just died out because no new lay people would have been inspired to come and join and become monks or nuns themselves, and there would have been a lost connection. It survived because of that synergy of the fourfold assembly of monks, nuns, laymen and lay women. Without all 4 parts of this assembly, then there is no Buddhasasana, there's no Buddhist religion in its form as we know it, of Buddhist monks and lay people. Upasakas, upasikas are the Pali names. Upasaka, man; upasika, lady, lay person. So it's very important, and I'm very blessed that having ended up here, for whatever reason, I can practice in this way, literally to the way the Buddha taught. So when I go off next week on my charaka, wandering, I will be taking upon myself, continuing with, because they haven't really changed, these Dhutanga practices, which are the 13 additional ascetic practices the Buddha allows monks to do, like sticking to the eating of 1 meal a day, sticking to just the 3 robes, sticking to various other aspects of our practice that are perhaps a little bit more flexible when you're living in a monastery full time, or if you're in a country which isn't so supportive to the life of a Buddhist monk, a full renunciant. But Going to a Buddhist country like Sri Lanka, which is very supportive of Buddhist monks, I am able to practice this very much at its fullest, and I will be doing so, because this is the way I like to practice as a forest monk, as a wandering ascetic, but still obviously with the dependency I have with my Sangha back here in England in terms of my support to them, their support to me. It's a mutual thing, like the lay people with monks and the monks with lay people. The Sangha supports its monks within it, and they then support the Sangha that supports them by their activities, their right livelihood, their moral virtue, their representation of this Sangha, not only of their own Sangha, but the Sangha as a whole of Buddhist monks, both in this tradition and all traditions. So we're representative of that whilst wearing these robes. So it's very important that our sila is kept to the utmost degree of adherence. So what else was I going to talk about today? Well, I was going to look at some questions and comments, but I haven't got round to that, have I? Pavarana, which is the end of the Vassa, is next week. So we have a whole week left here to enjoy, to enjoy meditation. This has been very much a retreat, this last 3 months of purely meditation. I've been meditating 6 to 9 hours a day without any interruption or external distraction. Of course, we have these internal distractions. This is what the practice is about. This is the battle we have with our own defilements, our own... Well, I don't know what that is that runs around on the roof, but it sounds big. It's probably just a bird, but it sounds much bigger, like one of the monkeys. But I don't see the monkeys so much, not in this, because it's quite open where I'm staying here. There's no forest. The monkeys stay with the trees. So, yes, I've had this wonderful opportunity just to be practicing meditation, uninterrupted, other than from my own defilements of greed, hatred and delusion, which are still there, of course, because whilst you are experiencing in meditation distraction in the forms of the 5 hindrances of sensual desire, wanting things, or ill will, not wanting things, or even extending to disliking, or even hatred of a situation. Oh, I can't stand this place, blah, 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 blah. This comes up. I have my problem days, and tiredness, one can just get lazy. One can feel, I just would rather just sleep. If I just sleep all day long and sleep for a long, long night, then this Vassa will be over and I can go on my holidays. You could think this way, but of course not. You need to be practicing all of the time, and when these thoughts come up and you feel tired, if you need sleep, you sleep. But if it's just out of boredom, then you need to stimulate. Maybe get up and do some walking meditation. If you can find some shade. It's a little difficult walking meditation here in the day. In the evening, nice. In the morning, nice. But in the middle of the day, it's difficult to find a shady spot. Which is why monks live in forests, for that protection from the sun during the day. But at least we don't have the humidity here. I'm not rotting. In Thailand, in the forest there for the Vassa, I would have rotted by now. My robes would be mouldy and falling to bits, hence the requirement at the end of Vassa for one to have this katina ceremony where new robes are offered and all of these things that the lay people put on. Now, I will not be in India here for the coming katina ceremony because I will be going earlier. That's going to be on the 5th of November. I must say, these big Buddhist functions, and that is really for the lay people. They organise that, and it's a big celebration for them. For me, they're not they're very inspiring. I'm not very big on big get-together functions and ceremonies and that side of Buddhism. I prefer just the solitary practice or the group practice, but the practice, the celebration side is something I kind of left behind me in lay life and would rather leave to others to enjoy. So I'm not too sad about missing that. But then the other hindrance is, of course, then is restlessness and worry in meditation, which comes up. This is planning for the future, or worrying about, thinking about the future, or worrying about the past. This is where that only comes from. If you bring it back into this present moment, and actually in this time towards the end of the Vassa, once you've got your plans as in place as to what you're doing next, then you don't have to worry about what's next. That takes the future out of the equation. And I can enjoy this last few weeks, or have been enjoying this last few weeks, more so knowing what happens next. When we can fully let go of what happens next, we really have attained to some very high degree of enlightenment or in attainment, because this is what it is about. When we have let go of what's next and let go of the past, we are fully in this present moment, here and now. And this is our ultimate goal, to be free from suffering. And our suffering only comes from desire for becoming what's happening next, or desire for what has happened not to have happened, neither of which we can control or have any ability to alter. What will be, will be. Now we can put in place the causes and conditions which will have the effect on what will happen next, and determine which direction, good or bad, that will go. But it's only here and now that we are experiencing and able to have any sense of, control over this present moment. And this is what we learn through meditation, eliminating eventually that final hindrance, the fifth hindrance of doubt, which is doubt in the teachings of the Buddha, really. Doubt in these Four Noble Truths of suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering, this Noble Eightfold Path, which I am living, this Noble Eightfold Path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, in its three component categories. So, this being said, even in this perfect environment, you have these same distractions. And this is what my friend, what I got distracted from saying, was asking me. He said, is it a good place that you have for meditation there? I said, well, yes. I said, there's miles and miles. I can walk for miles and miles here, kilometers and kilometers. It's just open space. There's forested areas. There's everything for meditation. There's temples, there's everything. But that's not what it's about. It's the five hindrances. All I need is this mat, these less than 2 square feet space, and to sit in this posture. This can be done anywhere. You can meditate anywhere, because the distractions are not external. Whether I'm here or in Sri Lanka or Thailand or in England, it doesn't matter. As long as you're just relatively of an okay temperature and protected to some extent from insects, sun, rain, this and that, then as long as you're relatively safe, all that matters is that you can sit and be aware and then deal with those 5 hindrances I was just talking about, of sensual desire, restlessness, sensual desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness and worry and doubt. Dealing with those is what we are battling with in meditation. But we shouldn't see it as a battle. See each one of them as coming up and reminding us of what's going on in this present moment, here and now, bringing us back into always the body. And we do this with our breath. If our breath is our meditation object, it's a wonderful meditation object for that reason, because as we remember and we come back to the breath, we are coming also back to the body, reminding us of the presence of this body. Now, some see this presence of the body and this presence of thinking in the mind as a distraction and taking them away from sunyata or whatever, emptiness, and this perfect peace. Well, it is really not, because what is it? its very presence, its very definite presence of this physical body with all of its physical feelings, and this thinking mind with all of its emotions and distractions going on, hindrances to meditation, what are they? They're a very definite and obvious reminder of this moment, here and now, because those things, all those things coming from these five khandhas, as a result of our seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and our thinking, and then our thinking mind, that consciousness is all happening right here and now. So whatever it is by way of distraction, whether it's something you like or something you don't like, something you love or something you hate, it doesn't matter. It's now. Embrace it as being that reminder of what? Well, what knows that? Yes? It's that knowing, that awareness of just that. What it is that's happening here, what it is that's happening now, in this moment. Just that we can bring our attention to and put our confidence and trust in. That awareness, that knowing that knower. There is our liberation, there is our freedom. So it doesn't matter if you're in this form as a monk or you're wearing a business suit, if you're living in the jungle in Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, or if you're in the city of London, within the square mile. This is a place where the financial trading and stuff goes on. A part of my former, another life in this life of mine. Wherever you are still in conscious awareness of that place, those feelings, both emotional and physical. This awareness remains constant throughout our lives. And yes, in this last 3 years since I've been here, the world has changed dramatically in many ways that I've missed out on and am perhaps not aware of. Technological change I'm unaware of. Political change I'm unaware of. Economic change I'm unaware of. It's not really been necessary for me to keep in touch with these things. And maybe nothing's changed at all in 3 years, but I can imagine from some of the snippets in my brief but not as regular as they should be conversations I have with my mother, which is my only real interaction with the external world once in a while, and my friend I spoke to yesterday, which is probably once every 6 months. I hear little snippets in the conversation that think, I don't really know what you're talking about, but make me think things have changed perhaps a little bit more than I know. But it doesn't matter. My awareness remains constant wherever I go, as does yours. And it's that you can have confidence in, trust in, faith in. It is that you can rely on, always being the same. This is the only unchanging aspect, the only truly liberating aspect of your very being, of what you are, and that is your awareness. And call it what you like. Call it citta, call it conscious awareness, call it vijnana. It's not really that, because that is more the thinking brain's consciousness. So that is what is actually really monitoring all the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing. It's more the thinking. Whereas there is a knowing, which is knowing that knower, knowing that thinking. If you've heard the expression know the knower, it is that. So if your vijnana, this conscious awareness, is the knower, then you need to know that knower. Know that knower's way it's knowing. Because this is where we really do come into our own and be able to liberate ourselves from whatever situation we are experiencing in any one moment, and see it from a different perspective, a perspective of freedom from suffering, a perspective of liberation, enlightenment, awakening. So, I didn't talk about anything I meant to talk about today, in terms of the comments and questions, of which they're building up. So I will get on to that in the next time I talk. And in the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope I've not rambled on too much and bored you, and there's something of interest there, something you can use. Maybe stimulate you to ask maybe some questions that maybe you hadn't thought of asking before. And feel free to ask me anything you like about this practice and this form, if you find it's useful to help explain the teachings of the Buddha, why we have this form, and what it enables us to do in terms of practice, and how it can help you with your practice, because this is what it's all about, it's mutual exchange. So I very much appreciate your comments and questions for that reason. And hopefully, if there's something useful, you can use it and share it. If not, don't let it trouble you, and just let it go. And thank you for watching.